earlier this morning, I was joined by the Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Senator McConnell, welcome back to Meet the Press, sir.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
I want to start with something you said in 2008 about judicial vacancies. Here it is.
Our Democratic colleagues continually talk about the so-called Thurman rule, under which the Senate supposedly stops confirming judges in a presidential election year. It's a seeming obsession with this rule that doesn't exist. It's just an excuse for our colleagues to run out the clock on qualified nominees who are waiting to fill badly needed vacancies.
Now, Senator McConnell, I started my interview with Harry Reid with a similar quote from him back during the Bush years, too. Essentially, you guys have changed places in your position on Supreme Court vacancies, and it seems to me the only difference is the political party affiliation of the White House.
Well, there was no Supreme Court vacancy in 2008, and that's what we're talking about here, Chuck. You have to go back 80 years to find the last time a vacancy on the Supreme Court created during a presidential election year was filled. You have to go back to Grover Cleveland in 1888 to find the last time a presidential appointment was confirmed by a Senate of the opposite party when the vacancy occurred in a presidential year. We're talking about the Supreme Court here. The election is underway, and what we are using is the Biden rule. In 1992, when Joe Biden was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, he made the point that a vacancy, had it occurred in 1992, would not be filled. Harry Reid, when he was leader in 2005, pointed out the Senate had no obligation under the Constitution to give a nominee a vote. And Chuck Schumer in 2007, 18 months before Bush's term was up, said if a vacancy occurred, they wouldn't fill it. So we're talking about Supreme Court vacancies.
In each of those occasions, Republicans at the time criticized those Senate Democrats for having that position. And frankly, that's what we're seeing here. There feels like there's hypocrisy on both sides. Democrats essentially don't want to confirm a Supreme Court justice if a Republican's doing it, and Republicans don't want to confirm a Supreme Court justice if a Democrat is doing it. Isn't that what we're staring at here?
Nobody's been entirely consistent, so let's just look at the history of it. It hadn't happened in 80 years, and it won't happen this year. The principle involved here, Chuck, when an election's underway, as Joe Biden was talking in 1992, when an election's underway, the American people are about to weigh in on who's going to be the president. And that's the person, whoever that may be, who ought to be making this appointment.
You know, you said something, though, about 3 months ago. You said this. My view is just because there's an election coming up doesn't mean you're not supposed to do anything. You've even noted we've had an election every 2 years, right on schedule since 1788. So I guess when does a presidential term run out? When does the president lose his authority to make appointments, in your view?
Oh, well, the Senate has been quite active. I mean, we had an incredible year last year. This year, we're going to have another year. We've got a great chance of passing every single appropriation bill for the first time since 1994. The Senate's not doing nothing during this election season, but we're not giving lifetime appointments to this president on the way out the door to change the Supreme Court for the next 25 or 30 years.
Let me get you to respond to a criticism that George Will has that's all over papers today, and you've probably seen it, but he doesn't much care for your strategy here. He writes this, conservative George Will: the Republican Party's incoherent response to the Supreme Court vacancy is a partisan reflex in search of a justifying principle. The multiplicity of Republican rationalizations for their refusal to even consider Merrick v. Garland radiates insincerity. What do you say to George Will?
Well, I just disagree with him. I think when you've got a nominee that MoveOn.org is extremely enthusiastic about, and multiple articles pointing out that if Judge Merrick were in fact confirmed, he would move the court dramatically to the left. Wow. I just disagree with George Will. I don't think it's a good idea to move the court to the left. But that's not really the issue here. It's not the person, it's the principle. Who ought to make this lifetime appointment? It's the next president, not this one.
Are you completely ruling out a lame duck scenario if Hillary Clinton wins the November election?
Yes. We're not going to be confirming a judge to the Supreme Court under this
even if it means Hillary Clinton nominates somebody even more liberal than Merrick Garland?
Well, it's my hope. It'd be hard to be more liberal than Merrick Garland, but it's my hope that that she will not be making the appointment.
Let me ask you about who could be facing her in the fall. Are you comfortable with Donald Trump as your party's standard bearer?
Well, I'm going to support the nominee. I've got an obligation to my colleagues and to my party to support the nominee, and I fully intend to do that.
But what did you mean when you told them privately you could drop them like a hot rock? You think it's appropriate for any of your Republican senators to run against him if necessary?
Well, I think we've got a bunch of Senate races in purple states that are very competitive, and each of those races will be crafted very differently to try to appeal to the people in New Hampshire or Pennsylvania or Ohio, Wisconsin, Nevada, Colorado, Illinois. Every one of those races are going to be individual standalone contests with people who we think have a great chance of winning in November.
And if that means running away from Donald Trump, that should be their strategy?
Well, I think every campaign will have a different strategy to appeal to different kinds of voters that we have in different parts of the country.
Are you going, and one other final thing, Donald Trump is having a meeting with various Republican leaders tomorrow in Washington before he speaks to AIPAC. Are you going to participate in that meeting, sir?
No, I'm in Kentucky. He did call me last week. We had a good conversation.
All right. Senator Mitch McConnell, I will leave it there. Thanks for coming on, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.